What is up, Coach Nick here, and today we're going to be walking you through Arik Armstead's training plan for one of his lower body training phases to make sure and get him ready for off season. So we're going to show you both how physical therapy and strength conditioning can work together to get you even better results. And I'm going to introduce our physical therapist right now.
What's up, guys? My name's Dylan. I've been a physical therapist for over 3 years, and I've been working in sports performance for about 2. So again, today we're just going to go through a day in the training program and show how physical therapy, neuromuscular training can blend with sports training and performance, and it's how we get the body right and prep for the workout of the day.
Nice. And if you stay for the entire thing, you're going to get both mobility drills that you can do and an entire workout that you can follow along and do yourself. So now we're going to get you into the actual training.
All right, so for today's training session, my role in this system, I'm a physical therapist. So what I like to do is look at the workout for the day and see what the main emphasis is. Is it a strength day? Is it a power day? Is it upper and lower? And then what movement requirements is he gonna have to do? So I look at the workout today and see half-field split squats, hip thrusts, parallel pushes as 3 main movements. So that's obviously hip extension based movements. So that's obviously gonna be a key driver of what I do on my side before we get started. So every day we start on the table. We do tissue work, mobilizations, primarily at major joints. So if it's a lower day, typically we go ankle, hip, knee, low back, pelvis movements. If it's an upper body day, we might do neck, thoracic, spine, still a little low back work, and then shoulder. So whatever he's going to be needing to move, we get it mobilized, we get the muscles turned on around those major joints so he's ready to go. Once he gets off the table, 3 main keys that I like to work on, normally 2 or 3 main emphasis that I focus on. So today it's pelvis, DNS, developmental neuromuscular sequence stuff, functional range of motion, and then rotation. So these 2 are normally just traditional rehab-based movements on my part, so movement deficiencies that I might see that he needs to work on to move better, to be a little bit stronger in these areas. And then the functional range is what I base off on the workout. So again, he has squats, hip thrusts, prowler pushes, which are 3 predominantly heavy hip extensor based movements. So I have to make sure he has that good anterior hip mobility so that he can get his hips back into extension. And then we're going to turn the glutes on to make sure he has appropriate muscle activation and that newfound range of motion. So with the pelvis and DNS work, pelvic clocks and hip saws are just mobility based exercises. We're trying to get the pelvis, low back, that whole complex to move efficiently. And we're trying to get the pelvis to move isolated of the hips. So think about it from a top-down approach. If he has a little bit of hip internal, external rotation deficiencies, instead of just working the femur on pelvis, we're going to work the pelvis on the femur and just get that pelvis moving a little bit. Once we finish that, we're going to go into the DNS roll and star pattern. Those are just motions that are going to get the whole lumbopelvic complex moving, but it's going to strengthen the glute med, the lower deep core stabilizing muscles that are now going to help improve his ability to move into that motion. So we created that pelvic mobility, and now we're working on the muscle activation to help move a little bit more efficiently in that pattern. From there, we go to the functional range work with the hip extension work. So again, we're creating mobility in that range. So we've already done hip extension mobilizations on the table. We're going to have him move into a little bit of hip extension, and then we're going to strengthen with the banded bird dog. So again, just hip extension based movements to ensure that he has, 1, the mobility to get into appropriate hip extension so that he's not going to get into his low back or put more stress on his knee, so that his hip is moving effectively for those squats, hip thrusts, and prowler pushes. And then now his muscles are activating in that range. And then rotation, 3D strap trunk rotation. So again, it's getting the trunk to move. So we did some pelvis work. So we did pelvis rotation independent of his trunk. Now we're going to do rotational based work of his trunk independent of his pelvis. So the 3D strap goes around his trunk. He's going to rotate from the top down instead of from the bottom up like what we started with. And then anterior sling, again, dealing with a little bit of hip stuff. Hip, playing defensive lineman, hips are going to be very important. That whole lumbopelvic complex takes so much stress. So again, from a rehab, injury prevention, movement correction standpoint, I like to focus on a lot of anterior, posterior sling work to make sure that that pelvis, that whole lumbopelvic complex is stabilized. So we're going to work on the obliques, contralateral groin with a little bit of a anterior sling exercise I like to do on the Kaiser machine. That's how we'll finish up. Once we finish here, his body should be ready to go. Ask him how he's feeling. hips good, knees good, lower body feels good. Are you primed, ready to go?
All right, once Dylan's done getting them all ready to go, it's my job to come in here and just take it a little bit further, maybe add a little bit of strengthening work to certain areas that he wants to have developed, and then we'll get into the actual training with it. So typically he should be feeling pretty good, and depending on that, we may or may not do all of this work. But for today's workout, we want to make sure that we don't neglect some of his knees and making sure that those are healthy and strong and getting them warm before we really put them to the test. So we'll do some TKEs. We'll just, again, further do a little bit more mobility work, a little bit more warm-up work with some hurdle over-unders. One of the emphases for this training off season and getting them ready for season was having a big portion of it really developing his hip flexors. So we'll do some hip flexors over kettlebells to get those activated, get his low abs, a little bit of like psoas going, and then we'll just hit some reverse sled drags, get the blood flowing, and get his legs ready to go. And then he really likes some belt marches to strengthen the glute medius, get a little bit of stability work, and his hips feel open after that. So we'll typically add in some belt marches, about 2 sets for all of these that we're doing, because we don't want to overly fatigue him, but we want to warm up and make sure he's ready to go. So today we do overall arching picture is concurrent training, meaning that we're not just focusing like just on strength or just on power or just on hypertrophy. As an athlete, you have to express all qualities at all times on the field. So we do a concurrent training model where we are focusing some portions on power, some portions on strength. Right now we're moving into a strength and power phase, so there's a little bit more emphasis on strength, but we never want to just get rid of our plyometrics. So for Arik, we're really working on being quick off the ground and building some elastic strength in the ankles so he can apply all the strength that he has in his legs down into the ground and actually cover ground or be more explosive with this first step. So we're doing a reactive base or a quick base movement, which is a box pogo where we land on one and then jumps back off and lands on two, again, trying to work that elastic strength of the ankle. Then we'll hit some single leg lateral pogos on box. Again, we're trying to work a quick ground contact time. Both of those, about 3 sets of 10 or 3 sets of 10 on each side to make that happen. With the extensive base plyometrics, which are these right here, we can typically go up in reps a little bit. So it's not just doing like 5, 6 reps. We can typically go 10, 15, 20 because they're not as intensive on the body. Now, after we get through those, we're going to go into a Kaiser squat. So we typically, with something like a Kaiser squat or a very power-based movement, we're trying to maximize the overall power output, right? So we're adjusting the load to match his at the highest velocity he can go to get peak power output. What we're doing today, since he is such a strong athlete and really can already generate a ton of power, where he struggles is a little bit more on the velocity side of things. We're actually going to lighten the load up to around 75% to 50% of his body weight and really focus on him being able to move very, very quickly out of the hole to try to train his CNS to move even faster. So that's why we have the Kaiser squat in there. After we get through the Kaiser squat and our power and plyometric work, then we're going to start to hit our strength and power work. So we're using something called a contrast set. So the first contrast set we have is a rear foot elevated Hatfield squat. The Hatfield squat is great for unilateral variations because it adds some stability with the hands. So you're able to push the maximal amount of load that you can, and you're not really worried about stability. It's not to say that stability is not important for athletes, it definitely is. But what we're after here is maximal strength or maximal force output. Okay, so we'll do about 3 sets of 5. Immediately after, we're gonna go into a single leg rocker box jump. So single leg rocker box jump, I wouldn't consider like a true plyometric because there's no, we're not contacting the ground and then going off. We're just simply sitting on a bench, rocking over, and then putting maximal amounts of force into the ground to try to jump as high as we can with that single leg. So this is a great unilateral or single leg contrast set for athletes. After that, now we're really going to focus on more of a horizontal plane, more glute focused work. So we're going into a hip thrust plus broad jumps. So this again is to really work that hip extension, one, to strengthen the glutes and get them firing there, and then to go into box jumps to then again express that power and express that force a lot faster with his hip extension. So those are going to be our 2 main movements where we're doing the contrast training. After that, we're gonna start to work in some accessory-based work where we're just gonna round the rest of the workout out, where we're gonna get some ATG split squats. We're trying to work full range of motion, get the quad going a little bit, again, work a little bit on his knee health. And then we're gonna pair some RDLs and some slider hamstring curls. So we're targeting the hamstring in both planes, which is gonna be the hip dominant versus knee dominant. So we're not just only doing hip dominant movements to target his hamstring. So RDLs are gonna be a little bit heavier, and then we're gonna do just straight into some slider hamstring curls. For that, you can choose any variation of a hamstring curl as well, making sure that it's just knee dominant when we do it. And then the last thing is that we're gonna get into a prowler push series where we're doing pushes down, reverse drags, and then we're also working the lateral chain where he is going to be holding on and doing some lateral shuffles for his strength and power workout. Thank you for watching this video, and if you got value out of this, please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment any of your questions down below, and go give our man Dylan, our PT, a follow at Dylan Boone, and I'll put that in the description down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.